What's good, y'all? I'm your humble host, Tone DeShields II, and you guys are locked in on another dose of Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. Before we get too comfortable, though, make sure you guys smash that like button and make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. In this video, we're going to recap and discuss how the Philadelphia Eagles have historically approached day one and day two of the NFL draft, specifically in the Nick Sirianni era. We're also going to break down decision-making, reasons behind the decisions, what the Eagles ultimately received because of those decisions, and how those decisions will impact their approach on the first 2 days of the 2025 NFL Draft. The Eagles have very specific pillars of success that they stick to when it comes to roster building, and because of it, they become one of the most respected franchises in the NFL. By the end of this video, you will have my full predictions for what specific players the Eagles will select on the first 2 days of this NFL Draft. That's rounds 1, 2, and 3. Let's get started. Before we begin to discuss my predictions about the 2025 NFL Draft, let's go back to the 2021 NFL Draft. Going into that draft, it couldn't be stated enough that the top two needs for the Philadelphia Eagles were cornerback and wide receiver. They were coming off of drafting Jalen Reagor in 2020 and really not getting enough out of the cornerback position despite trading for Darius Slay in the 2020 offseason. Now, I don't blame Slay. He just didn't have enough support around him. Nonetheless, they were originally scheduled at the 12th overall pick, but after watching the top two corners and Patrick Surtain II and J.C. Horn come off the board, the Eagles had to pivot. They swapped picks with the Cowboys and also sent over a third-round pick to move up to the 10th spot ahead of the New York Giants, who were scheduled to pick in the 11th spot. In the first round, the Eagles ultimately selected wide receiver and Heisman winner Devontae Smith with the 10th overall pick, and the rest is history. Leading up to their 37th overall pick in the second round, it's important to keep this next point I'm about to make very much in mind. The Eagles historically has had strong offensive lines in the past, but in 2020, the guard position was very much in flux. Brandon Brooks missed his entire 2020 season with a torn Achilles, and Isaac Seumalo missed 7 games with a knee injury. Remind you, Brooks was 31 years old at the time, and Seumalo was 27, and only 1 year into being a full-time starter. Despite Brooks and Seumalo being scheduled to come back fully healthy for the 2021 season, the Eagles exercised foresight and selected Alabama offensive lineman Landon Dickerson in the second round. It ended up being the perfect decision because once again, the guard position gets decimated with injuries. Brandon Brooks goes down with a season-ending torn pectoral injury, which ultimately ended his career, and Isaac Seumalo went down with a Liz Frank injury to his foot. Both players played a combined total of 5 games in 2021. Enter Landon Dickerson at the left guard spot, and he has become a 3-time Pro Bowler since then. On top of that, he's a Super Bowl champion. Moving on to their 73rd overall pick in the third round, we get to Milton Williams. But here's why this selection is extremely valuable and for a while was an underrated selection. At this time, Javon Hargrave was entering year 2 of his 3-year contract with the Philadelphia Eagles, and Fletcher Cox is entering his 10th season while being on the back end of his 6-year extension he signed in 2016. The Eagles knew Hargrave was a rental because they predicted he would likely outperform his current deal, and they also had to start considering life after Fletcher Cox. Milton Williams is selected, and he gets the opportunity to study behind Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, which put him in position to be a high-quality rotational D tackle over the years. And he eventually had a career year in 2024, winning the Super Bowl and setting up his major contract with the New England Patriots. To sum up the first 3 selections of the 2021 NFL draft class, the Eagles weren't able to get the cornerback they desperately wanted, but they didn't allow it to force them into a desperate decision. In the first round, they arguably got the best player available at a position of need in Devontae Smith, which atones for the sins of drafting Jalen Reagor in 2020. And in the second and third rounds, they remained disciplined and bolstered the trenches, drafting Landon Dickerson at guard and Milton Williams at D tackle, respectively, instead of reaching for a cornerback they weren't sold on, in spite of it being a pressing need. Later on in the offseason, though, the Eagles would eventually sign Steven Nelson to help stabilize the cornerback position opposite Darius Slay. Moving on to the 2022 NFL Draft, the Eagles selected D tackle Jordan Davis with the 13th overall pick in the first round, center Cam Jurgens with the 51st overall pick in the second round, and linebacker Nakobe Dean with the 83rd pick in the third round. What made this draft so special, though, was the addition of Pro Bowl wide receiver A.J. Brown via trade with the Tennessee Titans. But let's get to the details. The Eagles had 2 first-round draft picks, which is very uncommon for a playoff team. They knew they needed to add to the defensive line. mainly because Javon Hargrave was entering his final year of his deal, and it was pretty clear the Eagles weren't going to re-sign him. And it was also clear that Fletcher Cox was coming back on a one-year deal entering year 11. The Eagles needed to get who they believed to be the best D tackle in this draft, and that led them to trading up to the 13th overall pick to snag Georgia D tackle Jordan Davis. Now, in the context of this conversation, what we personally feel about Jordan Davis living up to his draft stock is presently irrelevant. The intention behind the draft pick, the intention behind selecting Jordan Davis is what's ultimately at the crux of this conversation you and I are having. So it's important for us to compartmentalize our thoughts here. We now get to the Eagles' 18th overall pick, which they used to make the A.J. Brown trade possible. After adding Devontae Smith from the 2021 draft, the Eagles felt although Smith was great, they needed more at the position to take their offense to the next level and also prove their commitment to Jalen Hurts' success. In the second round, the Eagles selected center Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska, who was handpicked by future Hall of Famer Jason Kelce. Kelce was on a year-to-year basis at this point, and the Eagles needed to ensure their future at that position, which ultimately proved to be the perfect investment in the right player. Jurgens has since become a Pro Bowl center, a Super Bowl champion, has shown tremendous value at guard, and become the second highest paid center in football. In the third round, the Eagles would end up selecting Georgia linebacker Nakobe Dean. This selection was a fan favorite at the time, and the Eagles desperately needed to add talent and depth to the linebacker position. Dean ultimately was buried behind T.J. Edwards and Kaiser White and spent most of his time on special teams in 2022. He eventually got his shot to start in 2023, but spent most of it on injured reserve and had his breakout season in 2024, but suffered a season-ending injury in the wildcard round of the playoffs against the Green Bay Packers. He contributed to that playoff run, and he definitely contributed to that Super Bowl run. And his overall recovery will be crucial over the next several months. In summary, the Eagles once again doubled down on the trenches with the Jordan Davis and Cam Jurgens picks and wanted to add a talented and proven leader in Dean as a developmental piece at the linebacker position. And he's proven that he could be a starter as well, but he has to get healthy again. Now let's talk about the 2023 draft class. If you want to build a productive roster properly, it's important to build it from the inside out and not the outside in. The game of football is always won and lost in the trenches, and like the previous Eagles selections, this draft class exemplifies that. The Eagles once again had 2 first-round draft picks and selected Georgia D tackle Jalen Carter and edge rusher Nolan Smith. They followed that up with selecting Alabama offensive lineman Tyler Steen in the 3rd round. Like Kelce, Fletcher Cox was on a year-to-year basis, so the Eagles wanted to ensure their future at that position. Fletcher Cox had returned in 2023 on another one-year deal for what would ultimately end up being his final season in the NFL, and Javon Hargrave had moved on with the San Francisco 49ers. Jalen Carter ends up falling to the Eagles in the draft, and he solidifies himself as the future of the D-tackle position in Philadelphia. Nolan Smith would come later at the end of the 1st round, adding more talent and depth to the Eagles' edge rusher position. Keep in mind at the time, Haason Reddick is entering year 2 of his 3-year deal with the Eagles, and the Eagles were playing hardball with Reddick's contract. So one could argue they knew Reddick's time in Philly would come to an end, which would lead to them bringing in Nolan Smith, who closely resembled Haason Reddick's archetype and playing style. Tyler Steen comes in as the Eagles' 3rd round pick, and he added much-needed depth to the offensive line. He was an offensive tackle in college, but the Eagles felt he would make an even bigger impact at guard. In 2023, Tyler Steen would back up Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens as a swing guard. Remember, though, Jurgens was drafted to succeed Kelce at center, but he proved he can play guard until Kelce walked away from the game. So far, Steen has been a vital piece of the Eagles' offensive line and has logged in a ton of quality, high-leverage snaps. Need I remind you, the 2023 season didn't necessarily go according to plan, like we all know, but the Eagles still understood the importance of loading up in the trenches. They successfully were able to bring in young talent with high floors and some with even higher ceilings. Finally, we get to the 2024 draft class, which may be the most fascinating draft class yet. The Eagles knew they had taken yet another step back at the cornerback position. Although he was still playing at a high level, Darius Slay was another year older, James Bradbury had fallen off a cliff, and Avonte Maddox couldn't stay healthy and couldn't play with the instincts needed in the slot. In response, the Eagles doubled down on their efforts to repair the secondary and drafted Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell in the 1st round and Iowa cornerback Cooper DeJean in the 2nd round. They would also add to the trenches again, drafting edge rusher Jalix Hunt in the 3rd round out of Houston Christian University. This pick in particular was a head-scratcher, mainly because Jalix Hunt was seen as a project, but he made an impact sooner than people anticipated, especially after Brandon Graham got injured in 2024. Nonetheless, this class was the final link in the chain, helping create the #1 defense in the NFL, leading the Eagles to a Super Bowl victory in dominating fashion. In addition, the Eagles have done a phenomenal job balancing need versus best player available, and also have prioritized targeting high-value positions early in the draft. From 2021 to 2024, we've covered a lot, but there's a trend. Follow me here. Out of the 12 picks drafted within the first 3 rounds of the Eagles' previous 4 draft classes, they have selected 8 players for the trenches, 5 defensive linemen and 3 offensive linemen. The remaining 4 picks were 2 cornerbacks, 1 linebacker, and 1 wide receiver. Over the course of the 2025 offseason, the Eagles lost Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Milton Williams, Mekhi Becton, Darius Slay, Isaiah Rodgers, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson via trade. That's 3 defensive linemen, 1 offensive lineman, and 3 DBs. The trends say the Eagles will likely go D-line or O-line with their first 3 draft picks, but an argument can be made for safety or corner or even tight end, given the uncertainty of Dallas Goedert's future in Philadelphia. The reality is it all depends if the Eagles stay put at the 32nd overall pick or if they decide to trade up for the guy they want or even trade back to get value. But you didn't click this video for a maybe. You're here because you want certainty. You want me to commit to a draft pick that I believe the Philadelphia Eagles will likely select. So let's get it done. In the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft, I believe the Philadelphia Eagles will find a way to select Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolan. Second round, I believe the Philadelphia Eagles will ultimately select the UCLA edge rusher Oluwafemi Oladipo. He is someone they brought in on a top 30 visit, talented, athletic, rangy, and the Eagles have a habit of drafting those guys that they fall to them. Lastly, the same goes for their third round pick, who I believe will be Georgia guard Dylan Fairchild. After losing Becton, you likely will want more depth and competition on the interior of that offensive line. So there y'all have it. And for the record, I could entirely end up being completely wrong when it comes to these draft selections. And again, the Eagles could trade back. They could trade up for a different player entirely. They could just stay put and keep it safe. Anything is possible, but I'm locking in my picks. So y'all heard it here first. The Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolan in the first round, the UCLA edge rusher Oluwafemi Oladipo in the second round, and Dylan Fairchild, the Georgia guard, in the third round. That's it for this video, you guys. Make sure y'all click that like button and make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you share. Make sure you comment below if you agree or if you disagree. And most importantly, make sure you guys hit that notification bell. It makes you fully aware whenever I go live or whenever I drop any piece of content. And it's straight like that. I've been your humble host, Tone DeShields II. You guys have been locked in on Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge to the game. Love.